Well, the word of the day in DC lately has been infrastructure. Taken a long time to get from point A to point B, but we're almost there. Brandon Kern is Senior Director of State and National Policy with Ohio Farm Bureau. And BK, infrastructure, as I mentioned, has been talked about quite a bit inside the Beltway, but we're finally starting to see what that bill might look like.
Yeah, it's actually been really the primary focus of especially on the Senate side, for a number of weeks now, as a bipartisan group has tried to find an agreement that will work, for a majority of members and pass it. And they have. They were able to pass it out of the Senate. And so, we're showing progress there. I think it's kind of uncertain of what's going to happen to this bill as it moves over to the House of Representatives, but they have at least cleared the hurdle of getting through one chamber.
I think about infrastructure, I think about roads, rails, and rivers. And obviously, those are three major components, especially when it comes to agriculture and trade and moving our commodities. But there's so much more about this bill that is definitely a good thing for our industry.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, there are things in this bill that have been priorities of Farm Bureau for a number of years, things that we've been calling for that we desperately know are needed investments in our country, things that you hit it on the head, that logistics and supply chain support, being able to move commodities to market, being able to move agricultural commodities to international trade destinations. So this bill has over $100 billion in investment for roads and bridges. That's vitally important to our industry. Over $17 billion in waterways in this country. So, we move a lot of agricultural communities down river systems and through ports. So that's vitally important. And then, things that we've been working on here lately of recent years is broadband investment. So $65 billion in investment in broadband infrastructure. That's really important for rural communities across the country, and particularly here in Ohio, for them to be able to be prosperous in the future. So those are the things that I think we can really get behind in this bill.
What other aspects of this bill might not our members think about that are good for agriculture? I know there's something in there for our livestock friends.
Yeah, so there's actually a really important provision in here. It's kind of like one of those micro level that it doesn't get a lot of attention in the news and things, but there's an exemption here that we've enjoyed in agriculture for livestock haulers for what's called the hours of service regulations. And right now, those individuals who drive trucks, haulers, are limited to a number of hours of service that they can go at any one time. But for our livestock haulers who are hauling animals, where stopping and starting could actually be very detrimental to the health and welfare of that livestock, that's been something that we've sought an exemption from, so that they're able to continue to move that livestock in a safe way. And so we were able to gain, again, an exemption to that hours of service rule, which is really important for the livestock industry. So there's things like that are included in this bill too that are really good for agriculture.
So far, we're talking about everything that is good for agriculture in the bill. There are also things that we have fought for that aren't in the bill this time around. What's called pay-fors. What are they, and why are we opposed to them?
Well, I think that may be, maybe the biggest win for Farm Bureau in this actual piece of legislation. As good as all that investment is, and some of the things that are really important to us, what's not in the bill might be even more important. As we started the year, there were a lot of these ideas were swirling around about new tax increases and changes in different tax structures that are really important to farmers and agriculture. So, for example, we've been talking about this concept of eliminating the step up in basis on capital gains tax, something that is really important to agriculture. That elimination is not in this bill. That would have raised new tax revenue. The idea of this new transfer tax, a capital gains tax at inheritance, at transfer at inheritance, is not in this bill. Would have been very detrimental to agriculture. And so I think that the message we've been sharing with members of Congress, Farm Bureau members from across the country, but just right here in Ohio, as we've had issued action alerts and things like that, I think that message is starting to really be heard loud and clear, that these new tax provisions are very detrimental to agriculture, and they shouldn't approach them. We were able to keep them out of this bill, so I think we just need to keep hammering away on this message. I think we shouldn't stop now just because it wasn't in this one particular bill, because there are more spending packages coming up. But I think that this shows that if we're vocal about this, we will be able to keep these provisions out of legislation in the future as well.
When you mentioned this bill is, I guess, in essence, halfway done. Got through the Senate. Now it gets to the House to figure out what is going to be part and parceled in and out as they pass it. As that process moves forward, are there any things in this bill that concern Farm Bureau?
I think there are some things that are concerning and a little bit disappointing. I mean, if you look at this bill, first and foremost, this is a major transportation bill in a lot of ways. There is no provision dealing with biofuels, in particular ethanol. We had a recent court case that dealt a blow to the ethanol industry or sector that will effectively prevent year-round E15 sales. And here's an opportunity in this bill perhaps to be able to rectify that situation. It's not in the Senate version. Maybe that's something that we can get done in the House, but that's something that we need to continue to look at in some vehicle or another. So there's things like that. I think also there's just a lot of uncertainty as you move over to the House side, because there's been a lot of talk about linking this bill with another completely separate piece of legislation that's another spending package that's $3.5 trillion. And that package includes a lot of things that aren't necessarily priorities for Farm Bureau. And so that's probably a package that we aren't going to be behind and supporting, at least. And so all this talk about, whether we pass this or that and under what time frame and do they have to be linked together in order to pass them, I think that creates some concern for farmers across the country and here in Ohio as well. It just confuses and clouds the situation, and so we'd rather just see them. Let's just focus on this infrastructure bill, get it done, and help the country move forward with what really are some needed investments.
Brandon Kern is Senior Director of State and National Policy here at Ohio Farm Bureau. He and his team keeping an eye on this bill as it moves forward. For the Ohio Farm Bureau, I'm Ty Higgins. We'll see you down the road.